Yesterday we discussed modeling, fixing models, basic questions of humanity and queries. And it's my pleasure today to introduce the second presentation, and that we also introduce the hands-on activity we will have in the afternoon. Hi, people who are watching us on the YouTube channel. You're free to ask questions on the chat. I think the transmission is already on. If you have problem with the sounds or the video, just let us know on the chat and we'll see how it goes. It's the second time we do actually this kind of transmission, so bear with us and sorry for any mistakes. So today we'll talk about something that I don't understand as well, just like yesterday, which is image metadata and gamification of Wikidata. We have here Magnus Manske, who should be the third human brain as an instance on Wikidata very shortly, but now you keep your brain there. So Magnus is, I would say, a very long time Wikimedian, probably I think you did the first entry on German Wikipedia, is that right?
Well, it's point of discussion. It's the oldest entry that's preserved. I think that's okay, because we lost the first few thousand or so.
Okay, so this is this kind of guy. He knows what was lost in history, so the history yourself, but also very famous for basically inventing all or many of the tools that we use on Wikidata. Basically, here in Brazil, we are very heavy users of quick statements, which is of your doing. Well, he has a Wikipedia entry, so that's the moment on which I'll just invite you to click on the blue link and see what else you can find about him and improve the entry in Portuguese. So with no further delay, I'll just pass to Magnus. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And so first I want to apologize. I hear there's an important football game going on right now, and I'm making a sit here, so maybe you can watch quietly on the laptops and pretend to listen. Yeah, that's. So I don't know how I ended up with this title. I think I should have added blockchain maybe to have all the buzzwords. But so if you want to look at the talk later on, because there's some links in the slides, I made this tiny URL which will be on every slide, so you don't have to hastily type it in. You can slowly copy it down. Okay, so lots of topics to cover. One thing that's kind of close to my heart is that Wikimedia, the whole endeavor, is actually a lot of projects, some big, some small, and many people just focus on one or the other of these projects, which is good, but then they kind of say, oh no, I don't want the other, I don't want Wikidata here, I don't like Commons because they delete my images. And I think it's important to remember this is a whole ecosystem of projects that all should be seen not as separate entities, but as one project with different aspects. So this title is actually the Latin motto that used to be on the dollar bill. It means out of many, one. But then in the 60s, the Americans thought that sounded too much like communism, so they changed it to "In God We Trust." I'll leave that uncommented. So maybe focusing on Wikidata, because that's why we're here. There is a more direct ecosystem around Wikidata. It's linking to all the other projects, certainly, but mostly I think this was a start to Wikipedia using the language links, the site links, centralizing them in Wikidata. And of course, we have Wikidata Query, which is what makes Wikidata effectively useful, because without querying this whole database, it's really just a stamp collection. Then we have the tools that work on both of these and make certain tasks a bit simpler. Then we actually have some third-party users, some big ones already. So VIAF, which is a very large catalog in the US that basically assigns ID numbers to everyone who has ever published anything. They collect links to other national libraries for the same person, and they also, since I think 2 years or so, they also link to Wikidata, and we link to them. There's Histropedia, they do timelines based on Wikidata, and quite a few others. Then, of course, there's Wikimedia Commons. Right now, Wikidata using images from Commons, but Commons, as we know, getting the structured data, so that will be a lot more tightly integrated and quite similar in some way to Wikidata to query and to edit. And then there's Wiktionary. I'll have one slide about this later because it's very early stages with the Lexemes that were added well, the first stage was added like a few weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, to Wikidata. Let's start with usage on Wikipedia. So there's obviously the language links, which was where it all started and which ended with, I think, 250 million language links being removed from Wikipedia because they were then centralized in Wikidata. Was quite a lot of redundancy there. Then we have template transclusion of Wikidata values, which is used more or less depending on the Wikipedia language edition. Some like it, some don't. The Welsh and the Basque are very big on that, and Commons as well. English and German are not really big on using Wikidata values in their articles in info boxes. Just last week, I think, there was a major update to recent changes and watch lists. So you could see Wikidata related changes to an article already, but I think they have improved a lot. That they only show where it's relevant. So basically only if the property that's actually shown on Wikipedia was changed, that it's showing up, and you can add some more filters to it now. So now you can have in your recent changes and in your watch list really relevant Wikidata edits to your Wikipedia pages, which was one of the big griefs of Wikipedians with Wikidata before, that they couldn't see what had changed in their article because of a Wikidata edit. And of course there's Listeria list generation, which I think some of you have already used. And I'll just briefly show it. So here's one example. This is actually from Sao Paulo. This is a category on Commons. And there is a single template without any values that's used in this category description, and that generates this entire sidebar here right on Commons, just using data from Wikidata. So this is a great example, I think, how you can populate and give useful information to readers and users. Just transcluding Wikidata and not investing a lot of time in that on each and every project. Listeria, we've seen this. You have seen this. This is an example for the women in red. I think we've seen this in yesterday's talk already. To some degree, women in red, basically women entries that exist on Wikidata but not on that Wikipedia, and giving some hints. Oh yeah, here's a potential article you can create, and there's some information. Have even an image already. and so on. So one thing I want to show, this is from basically going back to the first slide I showed with all the projects, how this all interlinks and how it creates a path for a user to walk along all the Wikimedia projects. So you could start with a scanned page from a public domain source on Commons. This is part of a biographical article on Charles Darwin. And on Wikisource, volunteers do import these public domain texts, and they run OCR on it, and then they manually check and fix the OCR, so it's actually mostly error-free as far as humans can make that. And even add some internal links within that biographical resource, and basically make one wiki page for each scanned page in that resource. And that's nice, but it has some issues. So this article about Charles Darwin could be spread across several pages in the original source if it's very long. And it could start somewhere in the middle of one page and end in the middle of another page. So what you can do on Wikisource is you can transclude sections of pages and then make a new page which transcludes these sections. And that would give the entire article on Charles Darwin, as it is in the original source, as transclusions from these original pages. So now you have one biographical entry about Charles Darwin from, I think it's probably Encyclopedia Britannica, 1911. So then this complete article now has a Wikidata item. And that, of course, is a biographical article, and the main subject is Charles Darwin. That's what this article is about. So Charles Darwin, of course, has his own Wikidata item. So now you're here. And now you could say, okay, I see some information, but I would like to see what this a biographical article about this looks like today. And then, of course, you can go to Wikipedia and see what today's standards is, what has changed, maybe what's new, what opinion about Charles Darwin has changed since the original source. So this is binding together 4 projects in the Wikiverse into one path a user could walk through. And I think this is increasingly important, that it's the knowledge should not just be on one project and the user gets that and then goes away, but goes and explores all the other things that are related to this within the Wikimedia project. And so there's a similar thing developing on Wikidata, which links together Wikidata and external sites. So we have heard about GLAM, I've mentioned VIAF before. So in this scenario here, someone could come from VIAF, follow the link to Wikidata. So there's a person, an author, scientific author on VIAF. You follow this link to Wikidata to that person. From there, you could go to one of the papers he has modeled, which he's written, which is modeled on Wikidata as well. And that paper has a main subject, and you could follow it here. And from there, on this main subject, there is a gene in the malaria parasite that has an external link in a third-party site called GeneDB. So you can then follow it and leave Wikidata and go walk all this way again through from an external site through Wikidata, ending up in another external site. And that's one use of Wikidata as a linked data hub. And the philosophy is we store the core information on items, but not all of it. There's lots of data that's just too specific or too big to end up on Wikidata. that's stored in other sites and curated in other sites, and we don't really want to duplicate this, but we should link to it so that people can get to it and use it if they need to. So you can follow these paths, or you can use SPARQL to query Wikidata and other sites that use SPARQL as well. Some organizations have their own SPARQL servers, and many of them are whitelisted now on the Wikidata query, so you can actually make a SPARQL query that queries Wikidata and the external site as well, and get joint results across both databases in a single query. And that's really powerful. It's not being used a lot at the moment, I think, but I think it will get more important the more big sites have their own SPARQL servers, and the better this gets documented, so people actually can figure out how to use it. And their queries get even more powerful than they are right now on Wikidata. You can also, if you know the external identifier, for example, a VIAF number for person or this gene ID in GeneDB, you can query Wikidata through SPARQL. If there's an item with this identifier, you can use a tool called Resolver, where you can enter the property and the value, and it will give you the Wikidata ID if there is one. You can even correlate two external IDs. So you can say, I have this VIAF, I want the GND number for the same item, and you can do this in this tool. I'm not showing this here, it's getting a bit specific, but I'm just trying to mention you can do all these things working with external identifiers if you don't even know about the Wikidata item directly. You can, of course, query directly in SPARQL here. So P214 is the VIAF number, and you could just enter it here, and then you would get the item if there is one that has this VIAF ID. And this was actually switched on just last week. This is very new, and this is going to be very powerful. It's like SPARQL Lite, you could call it. You can query, you can search in the normal Wikidata search for all items that have a specific statement. So here you can say this property, this number, or if it has spaces, you have to use these quotes. Or you can search for all items that have a certain instance of. And that's actually quite powerful, because I know some, especially if you combine it with a label search. So all humans that have this label or something, a label containing this word, that's actually very hard to do on SPARQL. Because if it's not an exact match, it won't find it. If your query gets too big, it will time out. But if you do it through search, it will actually work quite well. So this is brand new, and I thought I'd mention it because this is going to be quite important, I think, in the future. So how do we get all these external IDs into Wikidata? Of course, if you already know which items you want to add them to, that's fine. Then you can just do this with quick statements, but often you don't. So one of my tools for that is called Mix and Match. And that's essentially a staging area, so that you can upload your catalog, import your catalog of external IDs with a name and a URL and a type, if you know it, if this is a human, this is an institution, this is a painting. And that tool will help you try to find the Wikidata item that correlates, that corresponds to your entry, this person you have in your catalog, or it will help, and then add it to Wikidata, add this ID to the Wikidata item, or to find, oh no, there is actually no item for this catalog entry, and then maybe create a new item and start that and add more information to that together with your new identifier. And that's become quite popular, more than I ever imagined. So it's now 1,100 catalogs, where each catalog can have way over 1 million entries, are already on mix and match, and it's used, I think, quite heavily for all kinds of domains of knowledge, and it does make it much easier to add external IDs to Wikidata while making sure you're not creating massive numbers of duplicate items, which then someone has to come and clean up. If you don't want to use that, if you're an institution maybe, but you don't want to upload your catalog anywhere, you just want to do the matching yourself, you can use something that's called OpenRefine. OpenRefine is a software that's originally made by Google, or it's now owned by Google. It's you can download it as a desktop application, and it's a standard that's used in many GLAM institutions. And essentially, you can give it your catalog on your computer, and then you give it another site, another website to check against. And since a few months, I think Wikidata is in there by default, and that will try a fuzzy match based on the name you give it and the type. So if you know it's a human, or it's a place, or it's a painting, it will take that into account, and then for each of your entries, you get back a list. Oh, it could be this or this or this, and then you still have to investigate often if it's the right one, but at least it narrows down the possibilities quite a lot. So that's kind of a reverse mix and match. It's not where you expose your catalog to everyone, but you can do your matching at home at your institution without ever leaking your precious data onto the web, if that's your thing. And it's quite well documented, and there's even video tutorials on how to download it, how to set it up, how to use it. So I mentioned this a bit before, but I want to put some extra emphasis on this. So Wikidata is quickly becoming a hub for scientific data that's both scientific data in terms of so human genes. All human genes have a Wikidata item now, and I think most of the proteins that are made by those genes have an item as well. So that's actual data that's on Wikidata, but with that, there's a whole load of external IDs that are added to that. So lots of external IDs on the genes themselves. Then, of course, these link to diseases that can be caused by mutations in these genes. And these, of course, have external identifiers as well. So then you can run queries which genes are known to cause cancer, and you get all the genes back, and then from there you can use the external identifiers to go to specific sites that have detailed information on, oh yeah, these are the transcripts, these are the mutations, these are the corresponding genes in other species, and so on. And again, the idea is you can, ideally, if these sites link back to Wikidata, you can start on one of these sites, follow a link to Wikidata or a SPARQL query, and then go through Wikidata, maybe find a related topic to that entry you started with, and then exit into another external site, which gives you the information you are looking for, even if it's not on Wikidata itself, because it's too specific or too much data. So that's one part of this Science Hub drive. The other is publications. So we have, I believe, between 15 and 20 million items on Wikidata that are scientific publications. So Wikidata is quickly becoming a very good resource for searching and browsing scientific papers. And of course, we can add things that other sites like PubMed can. So we can link to the individual authors by ID, whereas on PubMed you only get the string name and you don't know is this Xu Li the same as in this other paper or one of the other 500 Xu Lis that are in PubMed. Chinese names are usually a real problem with that. And of course, then papers can have a main subject. So then, if a paper talks about a gene, you can query and get all papers that talk about this gene, or all papers that talk about a gene that is related to a specific disease and so on. You can build quite complex queries. Also, we're importing the citation graph, so which paper cites which other paper, which you can then show and plot, and you can see, oh yeah, this paper here is important because all these other papers cite it, so then you can go back there and look at that, or maybe find a review paper easily that talks about all these other papers and aggregates the information and so on. So there's a very nice tool for ones not made by me. It's called Scholia, and that is a specific interface for this publication system. Here you can look for specific authors, and it will show their work and how much they're published and what type of publication and what they talk about in their publications, which are their co-authors and so on, and which topics and so on, images if they're there. And you can do the same with journals, you can do the same with organizations that people work for and so on. So in that regard, there's a project called Content Mine that I would like to mention. That's also based in Cambridge where I work. And they've been funded by the foundation in 2017, and I think they just got the renewal for their funding. They are mining open source papers, and they're parsing them, and they're generating data sets, what this paper is about and what it mentions. So everything from gene names and identifiers to chemicals to species names, and they parse it into their own database, and then they synchronize this with Wikidata to some degree at least. So then that will give a very deep view into the individual papers, much more than you have from the introduction on the abstract on PubMed. And you can query that as well, and you can see what the main topic of the paper is, basically by the number of mentions it gets and so on. So that adds even more search and query power to this project to keep papers on Wikidata. We've talked about GLAMs, of course, just mentioning it rather quickly here. So just in terms of paintings, with over 300,000 paintings on Wikidata as individual items. The vast majority of them have a property that links to the creator, so there's an item about the creator as well. And about a third of them actually have a picture of that painting, which I think is quite good. The usual tools, Wikidata itself and the query tool are not really the best to view this realm of Wikidata. So there's another tool. Again, this is not mine, but I think it's very nice, even though it seems to load quite slowly right now. It's called Crotos, and that gives you basically you can search across most of these items on Wikidata here, but you can also filter it. So you can set you can set a timeline here. Basically, I only want pictures that were made between, I don't know, 1750 and 1850. You can search for them. You can search by author. You can browse by author and so on, and they'll show you all the meta information about this and links to Wikidata, to other external sites, maybe from the museum where this painting is and so on. So this is very nice if you like browsing paintings and so on. Certainly more pleasant than Wikidata directly for that type of thing. And of course, that will really explode in the positive sense, I hope, once we get structured data on commons, because then it's not just the few artworks, few in quotes, that are on Wikidata like right now that get that become queryable, the 300,000 paintings, but it will be all the, I don't know how many, 50 million files on commons that you can access in that way. Maybe not with all these details, but still will be quite powerful. And there's a lot of changes being done to the software at the moment, even to the base software, that the MediaWiki. They're changing the underlying concept of how articles are stored for multi-content revision, so you can have text and data and files on the same entry. So that takes a long time to get right, because we don't want to break everything else in the process. So it's a bit slow, but it's getting there, and we should definitely see the first things this year. I think you've heard more about this on the last Wikidata Labs from Sandra. Okay, tool time. So a few things you can do related to images in general, since we came from GLAMs and Wikidata. So you might have seen this one. It's called WikiShootMe. Maybe not the most fortunate name in retrospect, but at least it's a memorable one. So there, how can I change no? This, yes. So yeah, so this is this is the tool, and what you see is basically the red and green dots are Wikidata items that have a coordinate, and they are right about where we are roughly. So this is us here. I think so. Yes. And the green ones have an image, but the red ones don't. So here you can, if you authorize this, I don't want to do this right now because I'm not logged in as me. You can just click on this and then upload a file there if you have taken a picture of this object. And you can do this on your mobile as well. And then it will just open the camera app, and you can basically click on this, click on upload, take a picture, press OK, done. And I've tried it myself in the UK with lots of old monuments. You can walk along the street and you have like 30 monuments in a row, because all the buildings are called monuments. if they're older than X years. So there you can really go like, click, upload this, okay, next building. So that works quite well, and you can see immediately what's in your area that could use an image. You can also show other. So this is these are images that are already on Commons and have a coordinate. So if you're not in the field with your mobile, but at home on your desktop, and you want to add images, you can see, oh yeah, there are some images nearby. Maybe it's an image, it's a photo of that object already, and it just hasn't been added. So you can do that there. There's also these are Wikipedia articles, and there you can immediately see how much better Wikidata is than Wikipedia in the aspect of having lots of entries covered, because you have lots more Wikidata items than you have Wikipedia entries. A similar thing. This is rather new. This is like 2 weeks old. It's called Picture This. And it works in a similar way, but the idea is you happen to be nearby some object. Let's say you go into this snake exhibit here on campus, and there are these snakes, and they have labels what the snake is. And here you can, let me see if I have it somewhere. Do I have it here? No, I don't, of course. I'll just open it from here. So then you can just start typing the name of this object, in this case the name of the snake or something, or some object you just find, so like hammer. And now it searches Wikidata, and it returns things that start with the word hammer. This tool. Okay. Hello. Okay, so here you can basically just upload from this tool again, and this again works on your mobile, so you can just start typing on your mobile, even though typing on mobile is horrible, and get the list of items, and then you can upload directly from your mobile camera. And so here's one for Andrew for his firearms project. So hammer, the firearm part, doesn't have a picture. So there, point all your gun nuts to this one. I'm sure they'll be happy to supply a picture of a hammer in a firearm if you don't already have one. So this is, I think, might be quite useful if it's not by coordinate that you're looking for something, or just looking what's around you. But if you happen to have an object, oh, this is a strange thing, I wonder if that's on Wikidata and if that has a picture. Happened to me quite a lot, but then getting mobile out, going to the browser, going to Wikidata, the horrible mobile interface, searching for it, and then uploading mobile to Commons is horrible. So I thought I might make this easier. So if you come across something strange, where you could supply a picture, you could just try if it's already on there, or have your own picture used. And of course, just for the lazy ones who don't want to go to WikiShoot Me, you can just click this, and this will do a similar thing. It will check your location and give you the closest, I think, 50 items to you, and if it works. Probably doesn't work because you need to allow it to use your location, which I probably haven't done here, so maybe it doesn't work. But it will basically list. You can see this here a bit. You can list the items nearby, and then you can upload there as well. And you can click on the coordinate, and that will get you to WikiShootMe, so you can see where everything is. Then, if you want to do this a bit more systematic, you can use this tool. There you can give it a list of Wikidata items, which can be a SPARQL query or a category tree on a Wikipedia. And then it will check all language links from all these items. If they already have images, but Wikidata doesn't, and it will suggest them to you, oh, maybe this is a good picture for this item. So I've prepared this already somewhere here. Where is it? Somewhere is it? No, sorry, not this. I'll close this. This one. Okay, so I just used this query which says, give me everything that's in Sao Paulo. So this is just a SPARQL query. There's some, you can check some options here. And then you get this back, and there's 270 items that don't have an image, but at least one of the Wikipedia articles has some kind of image for that. So then you can see, is this a relevant image? So this already has this, this item already has this map entry here, so we're not adding this. This seems to be not the picture of whatever this is, but the logo of it. So if it were the picture, you could just click Add as Image, and that's it. Then it sets this picture for this item as image, as P18. But it's not a photo of this thing, but it's a logo. So then you can say Add As, and you get all these options here, and one of these is logo, and then you would click on logo. And it would set this. I don't think it will work because I'm not logged in, so I'm not trying this. But here's another logo. Here, this might actually be a valid image here, Humboldt School or Institute. And then you could just add the picture there. And it's quite useful to go through that by location in this case, or by topic, like all I don't know, Brazilian footballers or something like that. You can do other kinds of queries. So this query I ran, this follows the language links, basically the Wikipedia links from the items. You could also return all pictures and comments that are nearby an item. So if it's not on a Wikipedia anywhere, but there happens to be an image taken nearby of this object, you would find it here. You can even do free text search of comments or category entries. So this will follow the category, the comments category property on Wikidata, and then display the images from that category in the hopes there might be a useful candidate in there. And or you can full text search comments for each item, which will take a while, but and it will return lots of false positives. But if you can't get any other results, then that's still an option. Then this is relatively new. So with here's the free image search. You basically have to supply a query, which is very useful if you want to investigate a specific aspect of Wikidata and add images to that one. But maybe you don't want to craft a specific query, you just want to improve Wikidata in general, and then you can use this tool here, which is called File Candidates. And this has already done some of the work for you in that sense that it has already searched commons and to some degree the free images on Flickr for certain subject areas. So these are the subject areas here. I can add more if anyone's interested. Just let me know if you have a good topic to search for. So in this example, I'm searching for species. So that searches for the all items on Wikidata that are taxons, that are species, but don't have an image. It tries to find the Latin species name on Commons free text search and on Flickr free text search, and it already stores these candidates in a database. And you get a random selection of those displayed here. So here's a taxon that doesn't have an image. And these are potential candidates. This is on Commons already. And again, you could just click on this and add the image to Wikidata. Or this is on Flickr. And you could one-click transfer that image from Flickr to Commons. And then this part changes into this part, and then you add the image. And so in this sense, you have both Flickr and Commons as your image source, and it's just one more step if it's on Flickr, one more click. So it will give you lots of candidates for this, and it makes it easy to add images from both sources. The same tool can be used in another way around, basically where you start with an interesting image on Commons that came up in a certain search. So one search I have prepared is scientist. Then there's an image on Commons that's not used on Wiki. Test, yes, I'm back. So now you have these images that I hope show scientists, and then you can go and search for these on Wikidata. I don't know if you have a good set here. You can also search for species again. And then you can copy this, paste it in here, and yay, we have this species, but we already have an image for that. So yeah, too bad. So I click this away so it doesn't show up in the next search, because we already know we already have an image for that. We don't need to show this again. And then you can keep doing this, and you can if the item that's returned doesn't have an image, you can just one-click add it, or you can create a new item if you think, oh yeah, this is important, it should have an item, and I happen to have an image for this here, so you can create a new item and start with that and already have an image there. And you might have seen this one, not going to demo it. This is where the gamification comes in. So gamification is one of these buzzwords that's heavily overused. For me, in this context, it's more about reducing what the human needs to do in a certain process to the absolute minimum. So ideally giving you a simple choice or a single button to do the action, and everything else finding what possible action could be done, and then doing the action that should be done by the machine, because the machine is very good at doing that. But just leaving the critical decision, do this action or not do it, to the user. I think this is gamification for me in this specific context here. So in a way, these picture tools already do that. They give you candidates that could be added to Wikidata, and more or less just leave you the decision, or click on this button or don't. In a similar way, this game works. There's quite a few different actions. So there's image additions, similar to what I showed you before, but there's also, I have new articles that are not associated with a Wikidata item yet. But maybe there is an item that has a similar name or the same name. Is that the correct item for this article, yes or no? And there you can play one of these games where you just say, oh yeah, this is the correct article for this item, or no, it's not. And if it's the correct one, it will add it to Wikidata, again, reducing your workload to the simple decision clicking yes or no. And one of the key features of this game is anyone who knows a bit about programming can actually make their own games for this. So there's a JSON API. Basically, it's well defined. You make a tool somewhere. It doesn't have to be on Wikimedia. Could be your own server that generates this JSON, and you can add it to my game, and then people can play your game with your suggestions what to do. And several people have added games to this already. So that's quite open, and if you know how to program and have some ideas, please try it out. There's a tryout mode. Basically, you can try your own game before you actually add it for everyone to see, so you can test it if it actually works. And so far I've had no problems with it, that someone added broken things. Works all quite well. It's all very straightforward, defined, this documentation and everything. This I just added this morning, this slide, because yesterday we talked about, I talked with someone about this tool. This, somewhere I have it here. So this is called Tabernacle, which is because it makes a table. So you can give it a list of items or a SPARQL query. And for the items that this query returns, it shows you the item and then properties as columns, and you can specify which properties you want. So it's in that way, it's a bit similar to Listeria. And then it shows you the values for that, and it more importantly, it also shows you where there is no value. Let's I just hack this together. So here, so this should be instance of, and instance of and country. So country is set, that's okay, but there is no instance of. So here you could just click add, and then you have to enter the Q value. I have to improve that so you can just type it. But you need to get the Q value and can add this right here. So you don't have to go to Wikidata and find the add button and add this there and then go back to this page. And this can give you, if you make your, if you formulate your query accordingly, can give you a very good overview over a couple of hundred items where you know, let's say, instance of, and can add this on the fly, maybe as a group exercise, like, I don't know, Brazilian football players or something, add some information that they played in this league, or so this is it's not exactly a full-fledged tool yet, but it works for this simple edition, and I'll beef it up in the near future a bit, so you can add more things, and it's you can actually just type the text and it will suggest items to edit. And then I have just one more slide, which I promised about Wiktionary and Lexemes. So just I think 2 weeks ago, a new type was added to Wikidata. So on Wikidata, you know properties and items. There's now a third type, it's called Lexemes, which is, I'm not a linguist, so please, anyone who knows this better than I do, correct me. It's a type of word form, and people are in the process of filling that namespace. It's international, so it's all languages. The idea is to have literally all word forms for all languages in there, and there are lots of there's lots of information that can be added to this, like which grammatical rule does this confer to make it, I don't know, plural or whatever. You can add the audio, how this is pronounced, if it's on Commons as a file, and so on. And of course, you can link this, if it's appropriate, to Wikidata item, and likewise, I think the Wikidata item can link back to the Lexeme. And this will, for some time at least, coexist with Wiktionary, which has lots of more data at the moment, but it's very hard to access because it's all free text. So it's not really machine readable on Wiktionary, whereas this is obviously machine readable and writable, just like Wikidata is. So what will happen between these Lexemes and Wiktionary is something we'll have to figure out as a community, or with a Wiktionary community. And that might actually be different for each language Wiktionary. Some languages might say, oh yeah, we don't have much, we'll just transfer everything to the Lexemes and run everything from there, because the community is actually much bigger for the Lexemes than our small language is. Larger languages might think about this differently and not jump on the bandwagon right away. But I think we're seeing this with Wikipedia as well. So I think time will tell how collaboration and data exchange works there. So that's my talk, and I have some activities linked. So this is linked from the talk and from the wiki page about the Wikidata Lab VIII. So there's some things we can do in the afternoon. There are some mix and match catalogs related to Brazil. We can go and have a look and fill those up. There's of course WikiShootMe for Sao Paulo, where we can go try and add some things. There's the free image search tool where we can do the same. Here pre-filled with Sao Paulo by administrative area and by coordinates. I found a very surprising thing, that is a SPARQL query that gets all Brazilian food, but there's only one item in that. So maybe we should add some local foods to Wikidata so that they show up in that query, because this is really a shame. I think I've tasted a variety here now, and this should definitely be in there. There's a few things, if you're active, especially on Portuguese Wikipedia. There's a few things. So here's a tool that shows you articles on Portuguese Wikipedia that are not associated with a Wikidata item. So you can go and try and match some of these up or make new items if needed. There are items, there are articles here on English Wikipedia that are related to Brazil, but they don't have a Portuguese article yet. So there's something you might want to do. And this last one is probably interesting as well. So this is a page I auto-generate, I think, once a day. These are pages on Portuguese Wikipedia that do not have an image, but the associated Wikidata item does have an image. So there's 39,000 pages that could get an image, like right now, from Wikidata on Portuguese Wikipedia. And they're grouped by instance of, so humans are the most candidates where there's no image on Portuguese Wikipedia, but it's on Wikidata. If you go down there, then you get other groups here. I don't know what this is. Let's go down here. So then you get into smaller topical groups, instance of. Some of them might make sense, some of them might not, but so there's quite a lot you can add. And of course, I think Portuguese Wikipedia allows info boxes that fill automatically from Wikidata if there is no info box already. So maybe instead of adding the image, you can add the info box and get all the Wikidata goodness for free on these pages, and at the same time basically establish Wikidata a bit more on Wikipedia. So yeah, that's all from me for now. Any questions?
This is more of a meta question, but you have so many great tools, but your pages listing them don't tell us when they were created. So I am always running into your tools. I'm like, this is amazing, but I don't know whether it's a day old or a month old or a year old. So I'm wondering if there's any place where you're cataloging when you created the tool, or you could put that information somewhere, because it's fascinating just to track, when these tools were created, because I never know when I'm telling folks about it whether I'm behind or I'm ahead of the curve. So,
well, so I don't have a page or anything where I track when it's created. Actually, I sometimes lose track of what tools I have. I actually go to the Hayes directory and search for myself to see what tools there are, because I do keep forget that they exist sometimes. I know someone has created a few Wikidata items about specific tools, so maybe there's a good place to store the information. As to how to get the information is a different thing. So if I created this within the last few years, there's probably the creation timestamp of the file that we could use. But if they're from the tool server, then there's probably no way to figure out when they were created. We might have a look later.
Okay, I have a question. Since I hold the microphone, I have some benefits. So you showed several tools, and I also have a meta question. So when do you know when is the right time for a tool? Because we all in this room run onto processes of, trying to do what you do manually. So when do you know that something that we can do manually or individually can actually be made automatically and even be generalize. So my individual experience here working with this data set can actually be something that is interesting as a tool for general uses. So what is the thinking process, and how do you even design the development of diagnosing a need and coming up with the right solution that actually can tackle this need?
Well, big question. So often enough it happens like this. I do something manually, and then I find myself doing that again and again, and I think, oh, this is boring. This takes such a long time. I have to go to this page, add this, and find this, and somehow that should work automatically. Hey, why? And quite a few tools I've actually written myself use, so I can get a thing done quicker that I'm working on at that moment. But then often I branch out and think, a slightly bigger use case for the more generic case. So same thing happens if people come to me and say, oh, I have this problem. Is there a tool or is there a way to make this quicker or easier? And sometimes I start out with a very specific tool. So I wrote a good example is mix and match with all these catalogs. So that started out as a single tool that no one except one other person ever saw, to match Oxford Dictionary of National Biography entries to Wikipedia back in the day. And it only did this specific thing for only this specific hard-coded list of entries. And it was horrible and slow, but it did get done for that person. And then I saw the same problem happening again when Wikidata came up and people needed to match entries to Wikidata. And then I took the same concept but expanded it to generic catalogs, and that's where mix and match came from. So that's maybe the second part of your question. Once I have a tool, or once I know how to, I could build this tool for this specific purpose, I ask myself, is there a larger use case for this? Is there a more general issue that could be addressed here with just a few changes?
So you come up with new tools all the time. What's the best way to follow when you create a new tool to find out more about it? Or if there's a problem with the tool, to be able to communicate it back to you? Is there a communication method that's good there for you?
So basically finding out what is a new tool or one that's or one that's substantially updated. I usually tweet about that, and if it's a bigger thing, I put it on my blog. So these are my main methods to get the message out that there's a new thing that you can try out. I used to put it to mailing lists, but I think I was spamming too many people with that. So now I'm using blog and Twitter, and everyone who wants to hear about this can follow me, and everyone who doesn't doesn't. Yeah. The other thing is way more loaded because I get feedback on already too many channels. So on German Wikipedia, English Wikipedia, Wikidata, Meta, on my own talk pages, on tool talk pages, on Twitter, by email, on the bug tracker of many of my tools. Lots of my tools, I have the code in a Git repository, and have a bug tracker associated, so people file bugs there, which is I like that very much because it's much more organized and much easier to ignore. I know there's lots of bug reports and feature requests that have been unanswered for a long time, but I do have to pick because of time constraints just to what to work on, what to fix. And apologies in retrospect and in advance if you tell me, oh, you need this, and I just don't have the bandwidth to do it or to fix it. But yeah, there's many ways to get in touch with me and say, oh, what you would like, but no guarantee I'll follow up. Sorry, it's just as long as it's just me. There's only so much time I can put in as my night job. I do have a day job, and it's not related to Wikipedia or Wikidata.
So following your answer, how we create tools? Can we create tools? And how we implement them on ToolForge, on WMF labs, and which language do you use to create them?
So the first part is very easy. Answer is yes, you can go to ToolForge or was it Tools WMF Labs.org at the moment. And you can just create your username, and then you can start a new tool. And SSH in, there's very detailed documentation. And then you can essentially just start writing. It's, if you know programming a bit and a bit of Linux, it's very easy to get started. As to what language to use, personally I do use PHP, not because it's a very good language, it's actually a very horrible language. But so one reason is MediaWiki is written in PHP, which is also mea maxima culpa. So we do have Wikimedia in general has quite a few people who speak PHP. So I think it's good to keep that domain knowledge. If it's already there, just utilize it. So if I wrote in Erlang or something, it would be much harder to find other people who can pick up the code and maybe fix it. Than using PHP, which is like the lingua franca at the moment in the Wikiverse a bit. The other reason is I do have quite a few self-written PHP libraries, which are essentially just function collections that I can fall back on. So it's very easy for me to write, to quickly write a new tool, because I have many of the standard components already there, and I just have to call on them, like, oh yeah, edit, do this edit on Wikidata. I can do this with a few lines because I already have the code for that sitting around from other projects. Plus PHP is very simple to use. So and for the task we have, which is basically like get a bit of data from the user, get a bit of data from the database or something, do something with it, and then spit it out again. PHP and other languages like Perl and Python work very well, whereas C++ would probably be overkill for most of it. So PetScan is, if you've seen that tool, that's actually C++ because it deals with a lot of data internally. And there PHP is not very good because of memory usage. But and then of course I use a lot of JavaScript for the interface. There's a very good Python library for Wikipedia and Wikidata editing. So if you start afresh, maybe Python is a good start as well.
Thank you.
Hi. Ai, não falta. In this slide about gamification, we see a lot of little images. And are they really games that we can play in our mobile?
Okay, test, yes. So this is, I have two games. I'm not really showing the first one because I consider it obsolete, even though it's still running. This is the distributed game, which I mentioned because everyone can add game functionality. So none of the game functionality I'll show is actually in this tool. It's all externally. So each of these is one game, and I think everything above this line was added by other people. So all of this here is, no, I think this was me, but everything else is basically other people have written this game without even talking to me. They looked at the documentation, wrote their own code, tested it, added it, and works. So each of these is one game. We could try this one here. I don't think I can edit because I'm not logged in on this computer.
You can edit as me, that's fine.
Yeah.
You're logged in as me.
Okay. Good. So basically, this you can set some user options, including your preferred language, and this game will then check on that Wikipedia for articles that don't have an item yet on, or are not associated with an item on Wikidata yet. So this defaults to English here because it's Andrew's login. So it just suggests this page here, which is some 2018 movie. And then it asks, is this the same as this item? Which is not, because this is a disambiguation page. So you say no, get the next entry. This is some album apparently. This is a TV episode, so it's not the same. This works great on mobile. So on your phone, it has this box stuck to the bottom, so you can just thump your answer, yes, no, yes, yes, no. This is a TV series and some Bible things, so it's not the same. So the games will remember when you say no, and no one else will get that question again. Same, of course, for yes, because then it's set in Wikidata. So this is apparently about the April 1949, this article. And this is apparently the same item. So then you say yes, and you just made the Wikidata edit. Yes, so then we can go to, try to one-handedly. So if everything worked, see, here is the edit we just made through the game, and it does tag it as the distributed game. So this is all tagged, and basically if you, often the problem is people might feel forced to answer yes or no, even if they don't know the answer. So you can always click skip, and then it just goes away and it gets returned to the pool. So someone will get this again. It's still in the game, but it's just not, you don't have to deal with it. So when in doubt, just press skip, and you get the next one. And if you can't decide within 3 seconds of looking at this thing, it's probably too complicated, and you just skip to the next one. This is one game. Let me just go back here. So another one, this is a bit more complicated, is the image matching. No, it takes a long time to load. So there it's basically, it's similar to the other interfaces I showed, where you can say, oh yeah, this is the image, or this is a logo, or this is something. I don't know why it takes so long to load right now. But each of these sections here is its own game. Some of them have actually been played through, and they will give you a warning message, oh, there's actually nothing left to do. But most of them have lots of things to do.
And if you wanna, there it's saying add your own, and you can. There's a language you need to use, or I can use in Python, PHP, any language.
So what you need to do is to write some web exposed tool somewhere. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter which language. What it needs to do is, so if you look at the documentation that's linked here, essentially this is, so I'm defining some JSON that your tool needs to understand and to send back. So basically my game framework sends your tool a JSON object for the query, and your tool needs to answer in a specific way. And that's all that's required. You can write this in PHP or in C or in Perl or in Python or Ruby or whatever your flavor is. And you can use your own databases internally. It doesn't matter. It just needs to deal with this. So this is basically what you should send out. Like tiles, so each tile is essentially a question, like the header and the yes/no buttons or other buttons on at the end, and so essentially this is, I don't know what this is. I don't know. I don't think there's any. So these are basically the buttons here that the user would see, and here are the decisions the user can make, and then your game basically gets back, oh, this decision was made, and then you can deactivate it in your database, like, oh yeah, this has been answered, I don't need to show this again. And but my framework will, for example, do the Wikipedia Wikidata edit, so you don't have to deal with that. All you have to do is, if my framework asks you for new tiles, you need to generate them. And if it says, oh, this tile has been answered, you just deactivate it in your own database so you don't show it again. And that's it. And basically, once you have your web tool in place, you just put the URL in here. You click on test, and then you test it here. It's not edit. You can test it here, try it out, and if everything works well, there is an add this game button. You can add a little text and an icon, like here one of these icon pictures, and some title and some description text, and then you click save, and that's it, and then everyone can play.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Thank you, Magnus, for this wonderful, I would say, like it's a magician taking tools from the hat. And I hope you actually answer my emails about. Said, okay, he's talking about me, maybe. I shouldn't have asked order a tool while we were eating pizza. Okay, so thank you. So we reconvene in the lab during the afternoon to try out some of these tools. Eventually, my first interest would be how do I include a catalog on mix and match? We've actually faced some hurdles, challenge there, so it would be nice if we could actually learn at some point, but I think we can talk about this later after lunch. So thank you, everyone. Another round of applause.